Hey everyone, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the webinar for today. Yeah, my name is Akash and I will be your moderator and host for this event. All right. So, as we know that this particular webinar is managed by Prime Talent, so I would like to just give a brief about Prime Talent so that you know what we do, where we function, and what kind of areas do we look into. Yeah. So to begin with, well, Prime Talent is basically a branch of a bigger group, okay? Which means that we have sister companies like iPrimed and MNHA, okay? Right now, we are prevalent in UK, US, and Germany market, also India, where our primary function is in the area of recruitment, training, and digital services, right? So today's agenda, well, why we have gathered over here is to talk about a very important topic. Yeah, in this world where we all are striving to get better jobs and striving to place ourselves with good companies or good hands. There's a lot of talk about training candidates appropriately, right? So today we are going to talk about transferable skills. I'm sure you must have heard the term before. We're going to talk about transferable skills and candidate training, which is seen as an alternative to overcome the recruitment issues in UK especially. All right. Now to speak about the same, to talk about the same, and carry this conversation further and give us an insight into what's really happening. We have Mr. Jaspal Dhaliwal with us. Okay. Mr. Dhaliwal has extensive experience in field of education, training, and skills sector, exactly what we're looking for today. And he has worked with local authorities, colleges, independent training providers and companies, right? So which gives us a very good idea about the foundation that we'll be dealing with, right? At the same time, Mr. Dhaliwal has delivered, 4 digital boot camps within this period of 12 months. Yeah, he has worked with colleagues at Prime Talent. All this work that he has done with us has, led to this focus on how to achieve or how to fill this gap between what the employer is expecting and what the candidate has gained over the years. Okay, and just to improve the overall scenario of employment in UK. All right. So before I go further, I would like to welcome Mr. Jaspal, Mr. Dhaliwal. A very warm welcome to this. Yeah. Very glad to have you over here. Even though I've given a bit of introduction of yours, but I would still like, I'm sure everyone would like to hear it from you about, what you have done and how you feel about all the achievements so far. So please, stage is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akash, and that's a nice warm welcome to me. So yeah, it's first and foremost, I think it's a great privilege actually to be on today's platform. So a big thanks out to Prime Talent, and I hope the people on the call will find it useful. So you've already mentioned a bit of my background. So I've been involved in education, training, and the skills sector for a number of years. I've been working in further education and higher education sectors as well as schools. More recently, I've been working with local authorities. So predominantly my experience is working with learners age 16 and over on a range of qualifications, whether it's academic or vocational. And as Akash mentioned, I'm currently working with local authorities, specifically in this remit, working on pre-training programs to support our residents who are our learners in our communities with stepping stone qualifications. So this is really about their journey towards employment. In the UK, we have specific challenges around literacy and numeracy development. So crucial and key for us is about developing these underpinning skills to ensure that people have those foundational skills and stepping stones to access higher level qualifications, training and courses. More recently, I've had a really interesting time in terms of developing and delivering digital skills boot camps. Some of them have already been pre-designed, such as the AWS Restart, and more recently working with stakeholders, we've developed a level 5 web application, which is a full stack program. So in my current role at present, I'm working with Newham Council, responsible for the adult learning and skills provision which is Our Newham Learning Skills. So that's just a brief overview of my background and some of my recent experiences.
That's very nice. That gives us, a lot of idea about, what's really happening over there. And it's a good overview about what are the expectations, by the employers. So what's really happening in the market. So, follow up to this question, what we've just spoken about. You have, taken care of certain boot camps. You have interacted with candidates and all. So how has been your experience doing this in terms of, or let's say, if you have to reflect on the success of these programs? So what would be, your take on that? Do you feel that they are doing what they are required to do or why they're designed? Just a few words about that. How has been your experience in terms of understanding the success of this entire, all these digital programs that we're having these days?
Yeah, I mean, there's twofold. I mean, the experience has been great. It's been fantastic, connecting with so many amazing people in terms of having a common shared goal in terms of lifting people from their economic circumstance into higher paid employment. So having these skills boot camps specifically designed to move people into better paid jobs, and more importantly, not only about upskilling in terms of their knowledge or subject specialism, but what's been amazing has been the soft skills development. So, we've worked with a range of stakeholders, industry specialists, recruitment agencies, technical instructors. And I think for me, if an overall success in terms of what has really, pleased me and its most successful aspect has been the engagement of those underrepresented in the sector. And when I'm talking about the sector, I'm thinking about the cloud community, the cloud, that particular sector where there's underrepresentation for females or people from Black minority or ethnic groups. So in one of our first cohorts, we had a 40% participation of females, which was fantastic. Participation for Black minority and ethnic groups was over 90%. So in terms of the representation of those underrepresented in the sector, that was, for me, it was a great outcome. I think for me, if I was to think about, what could be done to improve or what future success looks like, I think it is about accessibility to these courses and programs, because when we roll out these programs, we have a particular type of person who applies for it. Usually they're male. Usually they don't have caring responsibility. So if we're thinking about accessibility of these programs and making sure it's inclusive as possible to engage a really wide talent pool. For me, one of the things I'll be working on is ensuring that we have representation for people with physical and learning difficulties to ensure that it's really inclusive and it's attracting a really diverse talent pool. So that was some of the key successes. Obviously, these boot camps they're designed to upskill individuals who have got aptitude, who have got motivation, endeavor to, in some cases, retrain from their previous profession, or in many cases, it's also already people on that journey towards these technical qualifications to embark on a career in cloud computing. So it's really interesting, the variety within the cohort, because you have people who have got a rich history of academic experience and a number of qualifications, undergraduate, postgraduate, and they still haven't actually been able to penetrate the market. So giving them this opportunity to actually engage in, a course, anything from 12 to 16 weeks intensively, and also not to forget about the employability aspect of that. So working with employers, recruiting to those roles is crucial. So lots to learn, but also lots to actually develop and implement and amend and adapt to make sure these programs are as accessible and far-reaching as possible.
Right. That really makes sense, and even talking about accessibility, especially like programs like AWS Restart program, they have been a huge success. People are quite interested in learning cloud computing through these programs, and they're usually funded, right? So we have seen government also is doing a lot of stuff or is taking a lot of actions to make sure that such opportunities are rolled out regularly on the market. Now, this is the side of the people who are conducting the program, right? They are enthusiastic about it. They are pretty motivated, and I'm sure the candidates are getting, really good trainers, really good mentors to work on their skills. However, we would also like to know the point of view of employers. How are they taking, how keen are they uh, to contribute towards the success of this program? Because it's not just about training them; it's also about making sure that they get placed. So, what would be your view on, understanding the employer's side, or their reaction to it, or their enthusiasm towards it? So, if you can just shed some light over that.
Yes, yeah. No, that's a good point, really good point. And I think, your first point about what the government is doing, I mean, there's certainly in the UK is a great focus on jobs and skills. Obviously, we've come out of the pandemic. Um, there's a huge issues in the UK, but alongside that, there's a lot of investment in terms of jobs and skills, and within the UK, there's a greater demand that we use jobs and skills to better serve obviously the communities and the economies, but the way the funding is being devolved. So you've got the United Kingdom, but obviously you've got big regional areas such as London. So funding for these courses has been devolved into these regional areas, and so what that's actually doing is making sure that that the training providers are listening to and working with employers to ensure that the skills, the training, the development is actually aligned to what employers are looking for. So in the first instance, that sounds wonderful. This sounds great. You've got a program, you're delivering it. The employers want these particular skills. And we're talking about digital, but equally it's important to understand that the focus in the UK is not only digital. The key areas of development in the UK include sectors which are crucial to the country's recovery. The biggest one for us is actually includes the green, hospitality, health and social care, and the creative sector. So there's a lot of other areas of development which it's actually been underdeveloped. But back to in terms of the employer aspect, I mean, it's great for people to get on these courses. They get the valuable skills, and they know that the skills that they're acquiring are in demand in the workplace. And as I mentioned before, we've got a wide range of skills and technical abilities. So overall, the outcome should be very positive. But in my experience over the last several boot camps, the conversion rate into employment has not been what we would like to see. In some cases, it's only been 50%. So, if you think about the investment in the individual, the institution, the technical instruction that's been provided to them is clearly not good enough. So, we have to think about, what's missing there. And for a big part of it, I do link it to the motivation of learners, and whilst we can be academic, we can engage in education training. I think it's about the soft skills development, such as the CV writing, LinkedIn profile, interview technique, and I think that's crucial that is not underestimated. Just because you've got a solutions architect certificate doesn't mean that you're going to get a job. It's about the soft skills. It's about applying yourself, and and the wider skill set that employers can actually see and think 1-2 years down the line where they would see them progress to. So we have worked with recruitment agencies with our learners throughout the program to develop their soft skills. But I think one of the challenges, I think, is from my observation, is the motivation of learners in terms of them being proactive and not simply just supplying a CV and then thinking the agency is going to follow them up. They have to be proactive. They have to chase up the agents, and they have to shine and show why they are the candidate. They're not just there waiting to be picked by the agents. They have to be forthright in terms of coming forward.
Absolutely, a certain ownership is definitely required from the candidate's end too, because ultimately they can present themselves well. About this point again, talking a little more about the reservations of employers. Yeah.
Hmm.
And we have, certain research says that there is usually why the employers have reservations because they feel that the candidates that they're choosing, there's a gap between their digital skills. And there was this certain statistics which said that, earlier this gap of not having the correct digital skills was 34%, but after pandemic it has increased to 51%, which has become again a great concern for employers, when it comes to choosing the correct candidate. So do you feel that, especially that reservation, that area of reservation which employers have, are these boot camps able to fill that gap? Or we still have a long way to go there. Do you think that exactly what employers are looking for, the kind of skills they are
Hmm.
looking for, the digital
Yeah.
skills they are looking for, are these boot camps able to generate that sort of skill set in the in the candidates to
Cool.
fulfill the requirement or bridge this gap specifically
Hmm.
of lack of digital skills? So would like to know
Yeah.
about that too.
Thanks. In terms of the statistic, so you said the gap has increased from, was it 34%?
34% to 51%. They've seen that
Right.
now, the employers are seeing much more gap in
Sure.
the skill set, the people they are hiring. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think sort of in terms of an overview, obviously we're in unprecedented times in terms of the talent shortage numbers. I know that, that statistic, it probably, I mean, not probably, it makes perfect sense if you think about, the demand for jobs out there and the people converting from these training providers into those jobs. And I think if we look at the medium-sized firms, they're having the most difficulty in terms of, hiring talent. And if we link it back to the top 5 in-demand roles, it is IT and data. And back to your original question, if we do focus on this sector, a good example, it's a great example because when I first set out the first AWS Restart Bootcamp, we needed a instructor. So we were trying to get an instructor to deliver the program. We had the learners set up, we had the infrastructure, we had the premises, we had everything, Canvas, the curriculum, everything aligned, everything set up, but we didn't have a trainer. So in the UK, we were struggling to find a trainer who could deliver the AWS Restart, and that's where we came across with Prime Talent. So Prime Talent was able to supply us with, not only an instructor, but wonderful individuals who really knew how and what this means in terms of the underpinning sort of motivation for these boot camps. So providing us with excellent instructors. So we weren't able to get these instructors in the UK. I mean, if they were available, they may be working in industry, and they wouldn't be in the education scope. So having Prime Talent is a good example because they were able to supply us with a trainer, and subsequently where we're able to use their trainers to support our existing staff to upskill their skill set. So for cohorts 2 and 3, we were able to use our in-house trainer. And then when we did set up our level 5 web application, again, we encountered the same challenge where we couldn't find an individual to have that full breadth and depth of experience and working knowledge of the content that the curriculum had been designed upon. And again, in-step Prime Talent providing us with UK-based instructors. So I think that's a good example in terms of how much the skills gap, what it really means, and I saw that on a first-hand basis. So yeah, I think it's a huge issue, obviously, but in terms of is the skills bootcamp addressing that? I think obviously it's working towards it. If I reflect upon the cohorts from the first and second, a number of learners engaged in the cohort got graduated, certified, but then reverted back to their original roles. And when I reached out to them, it was about not having, enough motivation in terms of, exhausting all opportunities in terms of recruitment, but also about taking on board what they learned in terms of the employability aspect. So some of our individuals had a rich history of education, but clearly you can't apply for a job with a 10-page CV. So it's about, identifying, streamlining, your profile, making sure it's relevant to the job you're applying for. So I think that for me, there's work to be done there with the in terms of the individual.
Right. I can actually relate with what you're talking about in terms of representing themselves in the best possible manner. Because even with the AWS program, I've been a part of the AWS program. I've also taken care of the behavioral skills. So I really understand what we mean when we focus on transferable skills, right? Because it's a very huge umbrella again. But having said that, I we would still love to know your point of view when it comes to transferable skills. What do you think? What kind of transferable skills employers are looking for primarily, when they hire someone? Because there's a lot which is covered in AWS programs and similar boot camps, right? There are some skills which are transferable, even when it comes to the technical side of the program, and definitely the behavioral side too. But what employers you feel are particularly looking into, if in case we talk about, the topic for today?
Yeah, I think just as a start point, I think everyone should always understand, like in the UK, that employers can recruit graduates from any discipline. Obviously, there has to be a level of sort of relevance. So, like, I don't know, in accounting, for example, you can recruit someone and who's not necessarily studied accounting but are working towards the certified professional standard, but they must, for example, have an aptitude for maths along with logic and some other specific skills. So I think the UK employers are thinking about the skills and competencies. And in particular, when we apply for jobs, I think we shouldn't underestimate, in terms of what they're looking for, in terms of their ideal candidate, their skills, their experience, and how the candidate expresses those experience and skills on their application process. And making it bespoke for each job. Don't have a generic application process for everything in one sector. Personalize it. Do some groundwork, research. Make a strong effort. Speak to the employer. Often with jobs, there's an opportunity to speak with the employer to discuss the role, gain insight. Understand how the recruitment process takes place, and practice that. Practice your presentation skills, and think about the interview questions, and think about how you can best apply all your skills and knowledge, I should say, to the interview process. So I think rather than just listing like all of your qualifications, about really personalizing it, making sure that the employee can read that and identify that individual as someone being proficient, who could carry out the role in their organization and is in tune with the culture of the organization. So yeah, so I think it's more than just studying. I think and the grades. It's about a wider skill set. Thinking about the skills that, if we're talking about graduates, what they've done throughout the throughout their university years, and the broader experiences around networking, and any example that you can express to show a wider range of skills beyond the specialism, and more importantly, the positive attitude. Just can't be understated.
That's true. That's true. And interestingly, after having this conversation with you, I'm noticing that how much we are, focusing on the skill set, right? And it's, talking about skill set and the programs like bachelor's and master's that people do. It's a general notion where people feel that what we study in colleges and what we experience, firsthand in the market is completely different. Because when it comes to colleges, they are dealing more with let's say what's written in the books, and skill sets are something that is developed through experience. So do you feel that this kind of gap which the colleges, the education colleges still hold, do you think they should now focus more on giving people skill set rather than degrees? I mean, what would be your point of view? Because this has been again, point of conversation among in various countries for that matter, where people feel that what they learn and what they do is completely different, right? So, do you think that it's time for colleges also to incorporate something like that and think about the skill set rather than just asking people to mug up what's
Mhm.
written in the book? So, what do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
I mean, it's an interesting question because I think within the UK, we've always had an opportunity for people to engage in skills and training, which is different from degree. So we have an apprenticeship offer here in the UK. So it allows the individual to undertake 20% academic study and the remaining 80% on the job, and that's worked fairly well in some sectors, but I think what in the UK there's been a big push since 2000 of degree study, and that's that's how you progress into employment, that's how you enter employment. But I think if we look at certainly what education providers are able to provide in light of the recent government initiatives in terms of these specialist bespoke programs, I think absolutely it's crucial that educational institutions need to have that as an alternative offer, um, and and because that's really how we're going to plug the skills gap, because there's going to be time required, and you know to required to fill those gaps. So intensive programs are crucial. I think crucial to meet those gaps, but also crucial for those who are embarking on a career change, because we can't just retrain and undertake another degree. And I think, you mentioned it yourself, employability must be interweaved within these programs, where I think having just a specialist skill set is not enough. It's got to be firsthand, while learners are studying, and they're engaging with employers. And I think, us as educational establishments, we got a duty of care. We must be looking to see where our strategic partners are using them to signpost learners towards them who are recruiting for those particular roles. So they better understand what those roles entail, and how they can see themselves in those roles, but also making sure that those connections take place at a far earlier stage, um, rather than waiting till the end of a program to identify what job opportunity one wants to pursue. So yeah, definitely, and it is time. It's happening. I think one of the challenges is the way funding is devolved. So obviously accountability, of course, 100% it must be there, because this is taxpayers' money in a lot of circumstances. So it's just really ensuring that the organizations are agile enough to adapt and respond, but also, be proactive, think further down the line. So challenges there, but certainly something which is in place, and I think already underway.
Yeah, but there's hope, we can say, right?
Yes,
That's
yeah.
good. So, I would like to also bring up one more point that you mentioned at the beginning of, our conversation. You talked about diversity, not just in workplace, but we're trying to achieve that when it comes to our training, right?
Mhm.
So, what are there any challenges when it comes to, us as the people who are handling AWS or other boot camps for that matter? Do you face any challenge? I mean, what kind of challenges you feel that are faced by trainers, especially when we live in a world where even people like to be addressed by a certain pronoun. I mean, diversity has taken so much of, there's, there's, I mean, it would be a pun, but there is so much of diversity in a wider manner again, right? So, what do you think this confluence that we're trying to achieve with people from different, different parts of the world? Do you feel that as a mentor, you have faced challenges in handling a crowd? when it is quite diverse in nature, and making sure that everyone is motivated enough or focused enough to not get deviated by anything else. So what would be your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I mean, diversity, it's so important in the workforce. It's important that we as educational institutions, that, learners see themselves within us, which is great. So we have a diverse education leadership team, for example, but equally the learners need to see themselves in these roles. So, how do we go about that? First and foremost, obviously, we need to make sure that our cohorts are reflective of the communities in which they serve. Crucial, inspiring, the next generation, making sure that people actually see people like themselves excelling, going into senior roles, and so they're aspiring and raising their aspirations to do so. But I think one of the challenges which I encountered was actually ensuring that cohorts are diverse. So I mentioned at the outset, female representation. Some of our programs are 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So one of the things which I'm working on currently is delivering programs which are in the core hours of the day, say from 10 to 3 or 10 to 2:30. So to capture people who have caring responsibilities. In the large, that's mothers who drop the kids off at school for 9 o'clock and have to pick them up again at 3:30 in the UK. So if we are able to have a longer, thinner program of a greater duration, but with the same content, certainly we can make sure that we engage cohorts of the workforce, of the community, that would not necessarily be attracted to this intensity of a course of 9 to 5, because as I said from the outset, a majority of our applicants are male. So that for me is a real challenge. So redesigning the curriculum, making sure that we can tweak it so that it allows a more diverse talent to flourish is so crucial. And I think not only that, it's about what we do following on from there, because you can complete the course, but then you revert back to your caring responsibility. So it's ensuring that we're working closely with other government organizations in terms of, social support and services, to ensure that learners, residents are aware of what resource they can access to ensure that they can get onto the employment ladder. So yeah, so in terms of a gender makeup, for me that's a big challenge, which I'm hoping to address within the remit that I've got here.
Right, right, right. Talking about diversity again,
Mm.
interestingly, which I've noticed, over over a year, that somehow the training is getting shifted from in class to online, has also given a chance for us to diversify our, crowd, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's somewhat like a blessing in disguise, we can say, wherein we are able to incorporate people from different areas of the world, yeah, and able to
Absolutely.
create that diversity in an easier manner. But do you think if it had been, if we go, to the conventional standards where we used to have classes, in a classroom, do you think diversity would still have been a challenge if we continued doing trainings the same way? Or there could be another way to achieve this, if not online?
Yeah, I mean, online's been fantastic. I mean, myself, through the pandemic, I've connected through so many people with so many people that I would never have ever connected with had it not been us, being in lockdown and having to engage through a digital platform. So again, accessibility, great, positive, but then you take it back a step and you think about, people's living conditions. You think about people who have got multiple dependents within a household and access to digital. So within, we talk about digital poverty, access to digital devices. We've got children within the same household who need those devices. So sometimes, yeah, it's great that we are able to use the online platform, but for some of our learners, they need a separate space from the home to actually engage in education. So they're away from the caring responsibility. They're away from however they're set up at home in terms of the demands that are placed upon them. So for them, for me, when I see that, it's about empowering, it's about independence, it's about people seeing themselves as, equal, and ensuring that they can themselves have got the decision-making power to upskill and change their lives. So that's the other side of it, where I think, yeah, it's been great in terms of the online platform, but again, that relies upon the setup, the location, and also the discipline. People multitask, sign up to a course, camera off, going out doing something, come back in, camera on, and then missing content. So through that whole process, that's not a nice experience for that individual, but more importantly, it shows that they're not geared up to actually engage in a program of that intensity. That's why it's so important that we need to think about the individual in every sense, and it's particularly those groups that are underrepresented in these sectors.
Right. No, it's an interesting point that you said that people, because they're able to handle now family and work at the same time. It's a blessing for many people, but at the same time, sometimes it becomes a disadvantage because they're not really able to focus on either of the sides, right? So, what I have also noticed during the program, it's really important for them to, stay connected and stay motivated about the program because things can sound monotonous over the period of time and with all these challenges. So what do you feel the candidates should, primarily make sure that they follow these ethics in order to, achieve the best out of these boot camps? What would you suggest? Some skills, probably perhaps like discipline. Apart from that, what would you suggest? What would be your suggestion, especially in handling both the ends when they're working from home, so that they can be effective?
Yeah. I mean, it's
What would
interesting
you?
because one of the first questions when we're enrolling people onto these courses is, do you actually want a job? And I know that sounds a strange question, but certainly some people, they keep moving onto another qualification. They keep moving. But the aim of this, and in a number of cases, is how we're funded as well, because our outcomes are based upon an interview and a job outcome. So that's how we get a further revenue back from our providers, funding providers. So that's crucial. Do you actually want the job? Do you understand what that it's going to entail in terms of you're saying you can't commit to a 9 to 5 boot camp, but
Mhm.
how are you going to commit to a 9 to 5 job? So it's about managing those expectations and ensuring that they understand that on the whole, I mean, that's how pretty much how you're going to the industry that you're going to go into. I mean, we have had candidates who said from the outset, I'm only taking a job if it's remote, and some of those people have still yet to find a job. So it's about being realistic with the expectations. Another person said they want to only work in a place where they a dog friendly employer, because they wanted to take their dog to work. It's just an extreme example, but what it is about being realistic expectations and making sure that they're set up with the intent to engage in the education with an outcome that leads to a good job and employment.
Right. Again, coming back to this employment part of it, I think a lot of people who join this program, they have this expectation of, probably working from home because they feel that cloud computing is a great platform for them to, have a life where they can work from home and at the same time, spend time with family. So do you feel
Mhm.
that this kind of expectation has led to this conflict further? Because I've also noticed, candidates not really willing for 9 to 5, but
Mhm.
are interested in taking up jobs, and usually their explanation is that they're hoping to get something which takes care of both the things. So do you think this kind of expectation is leading to this conflict, or it could be something else?
I think definitely there is that in the UK. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't get those particular types of jobs. I'm sure you can. I mean, I think there's a statistic 65% of certain industries are moving completely to remote or hybrid type of working. So that's not to say those jobs don't exist, but I think in terms of like an entry role into an organization to understand the culture, the dynamic, and more importantly for the individual, what can they learn from daily interactions with individuals and that whole experience of it. But I do think obviously there is that expectation with a number of our learners. I only want to work if it's remote because I've got something else to manage in the background. But then in all honesty, I mean, obviously there's a disadvantage to that because you're not putting yourself out for jobs which maybe require hybrid or or part remote working. So I certainly think that's something which certainly I do in terms of when we engage learners into these courses, set that expectation very clear from the outset. So so they're not disappointed at the end.
Right. And I think that's why AWS is very particular about, asking candidates that you have to be available full time to do this course, because I think we all are trying to set that expectation from the beginning itself, right?
Mhm.
That's really good to know. So, Mr. Dhaliwal, we have had, we've touched many topics and we have touched many areas of what we're trying to do today. Yeah. And I'm sure we're really thankful to you, first of all, for that, for sharing all the knowledge that you have. Yeah. However, we would like to, talk about a few questions that are from the audience. Would love you to take them up and give your insight. Okay. So
Sure.
just to begin with, the first question that I have over here is that do you think partnership, educational institutions, and business is the way going forward? I repeat, do you
Absolutely.
think?
100%.
Okay.
I mean that's one of our biggest challenges, to make sure that employers are working with training providers to ensure that there's a joint collaborative approach to getting individuals upskilled and getting them appropriately placed into jobs which meets those employers' needs. And some of that is also the placement, having work experience as part of the program. So yeah, I mean, definitely, it's got to be there. And also in terms of what's unique, I think, with the whole skills bootcamp aspect is that the technical instructors, they know the
Right.
industry very, very well. So they're able to give that real life experience to those candidates, whereas maybe someone from my background would, in terms of academic, I could teach, deliver something in terms of an academic perspective, but I wouldn't have those life experiences of implementing that in terms of into a workplace. So yeah, crucial. Good question. Yeah.
Great. Definitely. I mean, I think it's bridging the gap between what people, like we talked about earlier, that degrees versus skill set. So yeah, okay, that's a great point. Um, Going forward, the next question from the audience is that how might we work on developing and implementing on transferable skills in workplace?
I think in terms of, was that developing and
Yeah, I'll just repeat that for you.
yeah.
That's developing and implementing transferable skills in workplace.
Yeah, I think what we touched upon before, identifying the key competencies that are required, obviously within the role when you're there, but you know, um, taking on board where possible increased duties, making sure that where there's an opportunity uh, to add to your JD in terms of taking extra responsibility, and in many cases not that you're going to get a pay increase, but think of it in terms of what you're going to get in terms of knowledge, skills, gain as a result of that. And obviously, that's something which is so crucial in terms of developing oneself and growing. So look for those opportunities. Look for opportunities where you can show, where you can you got accessibility in terms of a skill set that you may not have presented to your employer that could be used in that particular example. And I think again, like with any job, you've got to see yourself within that job, see yourself doing it, but look at what your manager, your peers are doing, learn from them and observe those characteristics, those behaviors, those competencies, and start to develop those. And it is hard, it's hard work, but so it should be, because that's what we're here to do, to work hard, and and perform well.
Right. So I think what we're indicating at is that correct representation, and that should be the job or responsibility of the candidate itself in a larger way, right?
Yes.
Makes sense, definitely. So another question. This one is an interesting one. How do you feel that the skills sector, this entire focus on developing skills, is changing the scenario for female entrepreneurs or female workers? What do you think? How is that really
What was the last two? Sorry, for who was it?
for female entrepreneurs and workers, employees?
Yes,
So how do you
absolutely.
feel that
I think it's wonderful. I think it's great, because when I was working with the cohorts and we're having conversations across the world, there's I was talking to colleagues in West Africa who have only female only intake. And that's magnificent, because you're empowering communities where not only in Africa, Asia, South America, where traditionally females wouldn't be engaging in such education and training. So in that regard, I think that goes back to the two questions, or the one before, about the benefit of remote delivery, because where you've got that, in essence, what you've got is you're really empowering individuals, and for females, so important, amazing opportunity. So where I just want to come back to that, because when my response to that question before was related to my UK experience, but when I think about it in a global scale, of course, absolutely, that's where the beauty of online learning can empower, change lives. And those we've got lots of corporates that they've got their corporate social responsibility functions there. So it's ensuring that the institutions, the providers, are linking in with these organizations to say, look, we have got a particular underrepresented group, what can we do in terms of offering them an employment opportunity that will be remote, but because of a particular type of need that they have. So yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, for me, yeah, it's really wonderful outcome if we can see that improving.
That sounds good and promising. So, Mr. Dhaliwal, just one more question, from the audience, and this is again an interesting one. So, what do you feel as a trainer and someone who understands the field, the market well? What do you think that the organization should focus on while scrutinizing, or while selecting candidates on the basis of their resume, which says that they have done cloud computing? But what do you feel they should be? Their focus should be on while scrutinizing the profiles for candidates. What do you think when it comes to organization?
I think one of the things that really did surprise me was some of our candidates had MBA, undergraduate, and they would be putting on their CV, and there's nothing wrong with these jobs, but working in retail, which is fine, that's a job, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're applying for a cloud operative role and you're showing that your recent work experience is in retail, you have to design the CV to make sure that the relevant information is there for the employer, because whilst that shows that you're good in terms of that you've got a good work ethic, but you need to be thinking about what opportunities can you show the employer to see that, to show that you can actually do that role. And again, it goes back down to the conversation with the training providers. we've got a responsibility to make sure that the people who are training have access and conversations with employers, because doing a course by itself it's not going to give you the correct pathway into employment. It's got to be from employer engagement. It's got to have that actively embedded within it. And individuals, they need to obviously be proactive and seek out those opportunities where they exist. But equally, us as training providers, I think more crucially, we need to take greater responsibility in that, because people are coming in doing 12 weeks of study, 16 weeks, and yeah, they're getting a qualification, but no, we need to make sure that they have access to corporate employers who are recruiting to those roles.
Right. I think I think when you mentioned that it's really important for a candidate to sort of customize the resume suiting to the needs of next employer. And I think over here, transferable skills play an important role, isn't it? Especially when it comes
Absolutely.
to customizing your a previous experience so that it's relevant to your next employer, right? Wherein, for example, someone from customer service can always say that he's very good at diffusing problems, or this person's very good at communicating their thoughts and ideas, especially people who work in customer service, because I've seen that candidates, when they come from this sort of background, they are always dubious as to how they should, present themselves. And do you think it's the right approach if we ask them or tell them to sort of, highlight your problem solving skills? Because that's what a customer representative has done, all his work life, solving problems in a minute or two. So I think this is the right approach, isn't it? What would you say? Is this the right approach wherein we can, ask candidates to highlight more on problem-solving skills or your ability to communicate well? Yeah. So what do you think?
Absolutely, 100%. I think those problem-solving skills, transferable skills, crucial, absolutely crucial. But I think also, in terms of what people seeking job opportunities also need to think about is, the style of questionings in interview. Do the research. Think about not only job-specific technical skill question. Think about behavioral questions. Think about some of the models out there to, that are situation based in terms of the question. So, those behavioral questions, I've been in interview panels, and when they do come up, I've seen people struggle to apply themselves. So, I think it's important to actually look at some of the models out there to answer those questions. So one of the popular ones is the CAR method: context, action, result. And think about those examples where they've had a situation where they can demonstrate those transferable skills
Mhm.
within particular examples.
Right. I think what you just said, clarifies that behavioral skills, candidates need to focus on that, because if I have 10 resumes, let's say, in front of me, and all 10 of them are cloud practitioners, so how would I, how would I
Stand out, yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly. How would I make a choice if all 10 of them are cloud practitioners? I think then it zeroes down to your behavioral skills and your professional skills otherwise, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great, wonderful, Mr. Dhaliwal. It was a really consuming conversation. We have many questions right now, but we are lack of, we are running a little out of clock, so we would have to close it. But really thankful for you to join us today, and take care of this such an important topic wherein people were curious, and so many questions that you clarified for us. So thank you so much, Dhaliwal. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Akash.
Uh,
Nice, a pleasure. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And all to our viewers, I'm sure that some of your questions are unanswered, so you can always write us on info@primetalent.com. Please send your queries, please send your questions. We would love to look into them, and also visit our website, to understand much more what we are doing, which is www.primetalent.com. All right. So everyone, have a lovely evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal, once again for your,
You're
insight.
welcome.
Everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.